All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. Thanks so much for being here with me today. I'm your host, Nolan. Big news last Friday. Marjorie Taylor Greene announced her resignation from Congress effective January 5th. We'll get into the significance of this move, and it of course, comes in the context of her newfound rivalry with the president. And this all boils down to one main issue in politics that is now dividing the entire right wing. And it's important that we talk about it because you have people from all sides of this debate telling you it's something that it's not. And we have to be very clear about what this divide is and how important it is, because in my opinion, it's an irreconcilable divide on a very major topic that has ramifications that affect everything else. So we're going to discuss Marjorie Taylor Greene. We're going to discuss that topic and why there is a divide on that topic that we'll get into. And then also later on in the show, we will discuss the latest on Venezuela, if that's a little bit of a hint as to what the topic of the Republican divide is. We are currently on the precipice of a war in Venezuela, and there's major moves being done in that region that we are unaware of because the mainstream media have once again, as they do time and time again, failed at their duty of informing the population. So we'll get into the latest down there because there's lots of moves being made that nobody wants to talk about. So we'll discuss all this today and more on the Quest for Clarity podcast.
Americanism, not globalism.
I am not a slave. I am a free citizen.
There should be no Federal Reserve system.
Only America first.
End all of these wars. America is trying to play empire. We want everything released, and you're actively covering it up. It's not America first to be pushing our influence in areas where it shouldn't be. We're run by people that don't understand what they're doing and don't understand the ramifications of the policies they're enacting. That's an incredibly dangerous situation. All right, everybody, before we begin, if you wouldn't mind going right down below this video and hitting like and subscribe, I'd really appreciate that. Also, if you wouldn't mind going to my Instagram, X, and Spotify accounts and giving all those pages a follow, I'd really appreciate that as well. Let's get into the news of the day, which is that, of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene is now announcing her resignation effective January 5th. And this is a major move that has a more representative effect, and it also has a literal effect on the balance of power in the House, and it's going to now, in the gap period between January 5th and Election Day in the midterms of next year, about a year out. Now, Republicans already have, I believe, a 3-seat majority in the House. It's a very slim majority that's already making it, with people like Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene, very difficult to get a lot of this legislation passed that they want. Now, I should just say that the reason that Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie are holding back a lot of legislation isn't because they're some rhinos that are against the Trump platform. That's not it at all. It's because Thomas Massie is, of course, libertarian, and he is not for reckless government spending, as any sensible person shouldn't be. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is in it because is acting the way she's acting because she feels that she was misled, and that the platforms that the administration ran on are not the ones that they're trying to carry out. And I'd agree with a lot of what she says there. The latest of which being the Epstein debacle, which they finally passed the discharge petition to have the DOJ forced to release the files. We'll see if that happens. But that is the current state of the House of Representatives' balance of power right now. The Republicans have a very slim majority, and they can't afford to lose too many votes. And with Marjorie Taylor Greene stepping down, and with the midterm elections coming up in about a year, it's looking like they're really running out of time to get past a lot of legislation to turn a lot of Trump's executive orders into actual law, which, funny enough, Marjorie Taylor Greene was the only person trying to do. Mike Johnson wouldn't do it. As much as we like to say how great Mike Johnson is doing in MAGA Inc., he's not actually doing that great because he literally is not rushing at all to get any executive orders passed, as opposed to Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is now enemy number one, being the one who actually was trying to get the policy platform pushed forward. So it's a backwards world we're living in. But that leaves, now that Marjorie Taylor Greene's stepping down as the dissident America First voice, that leaves Thomas Massie to his own devices, and now he is alone in speaking for the average American on the Republican caucus in Congress. So it's a very interesting thought for Thomas Massie, and also we shouldn't forget that Thomas Massie is also up for re-election this year. And he's facing a brutal primary race right now worth about $20 million. The record of all time in a congressional race has been spent on him. So everybody, again, I said it last episode, I'll say it again. Anyone who can give anything to the Massey campaign, I would highly recommend to, or I would highly encourage you to, because it's very important that we have someone who actually represents the will of the people in Congress, and someone who's actually trying to reduce the reach of government, who's trying to stop reckless spending, who's trying to stop endless wars, these priorities that we talk about here on the show. It's important to have at least one person who's able to potentially play a role in creating some leverage for these positions. So I'd highly encourage everyone, if they can give anything, to donate to the campaign. But also, it is important to remember the fact that of why this is so important and what it signifies about Marjorie Taylor Greene stepping down from her role. I tweeted this out in the aftermath of her decision, and I basically said that this is a warning. What the coordinated attack, and if you paid attention to this last week after Trump attacked her, there was this coordinated circling of the wagon of all the usual suspects, all the usual figures that are supportive of every war ever, and all the reckless spending. These usual figures, all coordinated, in what seemed a coordinated way, attacked Marjorie Taylor Greene as a traitor. And this comes, of course, after years, as she's put it, 6 years of her putting in her entire political career and building an entire career out of defending the positions of the Trump administration and defending the whole idea of MAGA. So it shows a couple of things. One of those things is that, of course, in politics, as we now have all seen on full display, it's not very often where you can get as much loyalty as you give. So that's a good reminder for all of us. We have been loyal, or in some sense or another, we have been loyal to this movement. We've been true to this movement, and we have put in a lot of our personal energy and our personal efforts into doing whatever we can in our personal capacity to move this movement forward for the past 10 years. And for someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene to have been chewed up and spit out in the way that she was, needs to remind us it needs to humble us in a sense, and remind us that these guys are all politicians. As much as we like to think that the person we like is an exception, I mean, what is this show? And the other thing that I think is very important to remember in kind of a broader sense about government is that anybody who challenges the state apparatus, the deep state, anyone who challenges it in their own way gets pushed back in the most violent way. Think about the people on the posters behind me, whether it be Ron Paul or Tucker Carlson or Pat Buchanan. All of these dissident voices, in whatever way they were, whether it be Ron Paul and Pat Buchanan and Tucker Carlson on the wars, whether it be Ron Paul on the Federal Reserve, these people get called traitors to the country for not supporting endless war. They get called kooks for focusing on reckless spending in the Federal Reserve. So what you realize is that every time you push back against one of these essential pillars of the state, whether it be the spending or the wars that are the health of the state, you get faced with this smear campaign, this coordinated attack from all sides, and you get called a kook, you get called a traitor, like Marjorie Taylor Greene was. And this shows as a lesson of remembering what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with the state apparatus that will do anything and acts out of its own. We know this. It acts out of its own interest. It doesn't act on behalf of the people. It is its own entity made up of individuals acting out of their own self-interest. And they're in the state for the very self-interest of gaining power. So it's important to remember that these people aren't there as their primary goal to represent you. They're there to maintain power and maintain a monopoly on things such as force and the money supply. That's something that we always have to remember. And now with Marjorie Taylor Greene gone, it is basically Thomas Massey who is all that's left. And again, that is why I'm stressing that we all must support someone like a Thomas Massey, someone who actually stands on principle, is willing to take all the arrows for it, is willing to take a $20 million primary, smears as a quote-unquote anti-Semite, whatever that even means, and of course he's not, he's the farthest thing from that, and take attacks from the president for standing in what he actually believes, which also happens to be correct. So this is why it's such a big loss, somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene leaving Congress, which I really wish she wouldn't, is because she is the ideal representative, somebody who actually represents her district and advocates for the interests of her district and the people in her district, the industry in her district, and also represents what what a growing sentiment of Americans and right wingers feel, which is that this non-interventionist or this that we need a non-interventionist foreign policy, this constant mingling overseas, whether it be in Ukraine or Israel, and now seemingly Venezuela, is not good for the country. It's actually degraded the country. It's destroyed the money supply, and it's overall just reduced morale in this country. And it's not good for us to be an empire. And having two people in Congress was at least significant enough, at least two people who believe this was at least significant enough to push forward, for example, the Epstein files. And now with one, it's going to be a lot harder. But we have to do what we have to do, and we have to do what we can to continue to stand on principle, like Thomas Massey is. So that's why it is just such a profound loss for Marjorie Taylor Greene to be leaving Congress. And I do want to showcase that I just want to really talk about the one issue, because I mentioned the one issue that this is about, and it is foreign policy. The one issue we all have, there's, even when it comes back to the money supply, that's not as much a concern for Marjorie Taylor Greene as it is for Thomas Massey. The real issue, and the issue that's causing such a divide on the right wing, is this foreign policy question of, do we have to impose ourselves on every other country at the expense of our own monetary supply and our own people, and also create enemies along the way? Or is there another option here that maybe we should pull back from all these foreign entanglements that don't serve us, don't serve the people we're entangling with, and maybe we should focus on on ourselves? Maybe we should improve the liberty of our own country before we seek to do so abroad, and maybe we should stop with these foreign interventions that are inherently based off lies and false pretext, like we're seeing in Venezuela right now, which we'll get into in more detail in a minute. And I think this will help us lead in that direction. I want to show real quick that this clip from Rand Paul, he was interviewed the other day by Reason magazine, and I think this clip is completely correct in how it showcases the growing divide on the right. Take a look.
My favorite among my colleagues is when they say, well, I'm for this intervention, but I'm not for policing the world. And I think my dad actually deserves a lot of credit for making it unpopular to say you were policing the world. But they still do believe in policing the world. Yeah. I would say that most people in Washington are on the Republican side. A good solid majority still are of the neoconservative variety and do believe in intervention. But they've masked that, and they've been clever. So Lindsey Graham has not changed his positions, but he's clever, and he's become very close to the president, influences the president. Same with Marco Rubio. So the pending invasion or regime change war in Venezuela is hatched by those people. I actually think Trump is the one who is least likely to want to do these things, but he's surrounded by people who believe in regime change and are goading him on. I do think, though, that if he invades Venezuela, or if he approves significant arms sales, which are really gifts to Ukraine, or more welfare to Ukraine, if he does either of those, the rift with Marjorie Greene will pale in comparison to what happens to his movement if he invades Venezuela or gives more money to Ukraine. His movement will dissolve.
Rand Paul is completely correct in his outlining of the two sides here. It's really a war for the future of the Republican Party, a future of this coalition that's been built over 10 years. And it's a fight between a revival of neoconservatism and a non-interventionist America First foreign policy that prioritizes the interest of this country first. And we are now in a position where the people closest to the president, the people who were originally the enemies of the president and his supporters, the people who are now closest to him, whether it be in the administration or golfing on the golf course with him, are the biggest hawks that the Republican Party's ever seen. And it goes in direct contrast with what the supposed messaging is. His own Secretary of State is somebody that was considered an enemy by this movement just 10 years ago. And we seem to have forgotten that. His basically second closest person in the White House is someone who we just considered an enemy largely because of the foreign policy positions of this person. And now that person is in charge of the foreign policy. So it's madness. It's absolute madness. And he's completely correct and Rand Paul is correct in how he's phrasing this. And that leads us into this Venezuela topic, I suppose. And again, when did this energy of this administration, when did the energy that was built up over the first couple months, that energy died? I'm not saying this is direct causation. The energy slowly started to peter out after the bombing of Iran. And that is because a lot of these people, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who are the most hardcore supporters of the president, it's impossible to not realize the inherent contradiction with what we've been saying for 10 years and then that action of bombing Iran. It was an unnecessary, and it was completely unnecessary, number one. It was based off false facts that weren't even true about Iran's nuclear capabilities. It was based off an entire collection of propaganda honed in by people like Ted Cruz that don't even know what they're talking about, don't know the slightest thing about Iran's nuclear capabilities or whatever. Directly lying to the American people that Iran's going to bomb the United States, which they have no capability to do, even if they had a nuke. Like these completely easily verifiable falsehoods. And you know that a foreign policy campaign isn't legitimate when it has to be based off inherent lies. When every single point about why we must do this is easily debunked by a quick Google search, then how can that be legitimate? Unless you can actually explain to me the reason why we're doing this, even if I don't agree with it, but if you can explain to me a legitimate reason why we're doing this, then okay, that's one thing. But if the entire campaign, the entire military campaign is based off lies, then how do you expect people to believe it? Well, they would be irrational to believe it. So that was the beginning of this thought process in the base of, wait, what? We're doing something that we directly were against. Because on the campaign trail, there's countless clips of Donald Trump going at Joe Biden, saying he likes to bomb whatever, he likes to bomb everything, he doesn't like to negotiate diplomacy. We were engaging in diplomacy with Iran. And according to reports, it was going in a somewhat positive direction before Israel cut off diplomacy, bombed preemptively, and then dragged the United States into finishing what they started. That's what happened. That's the factual recount of what happened. So that was where it started. And now we'll move into Venezuela now. And that is what we are seeing right now with all of these wars, whether it be Ukraine or Venezuela. And they're taking a better direction now on Ukraine. But it was the continued support that is having people question, like, why are we still supporting this? The entire motivation of our position on Ukraine was that we don't want to support this war anymore because it has nothing to do with us. So we'll move on here to the Venezuela topic. And I'll start off here with an antiwar.com article from just yesterday about the latest in Venezuela. And we'll start off here. It's by Dave DeCamp. It says, quote, international airlines have continued to cancel flights to Venezuela as the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration issued a warning about flying near the country, a statement that came as the U.S. continues to move towards launching a war with the goal of ousting Nicolas Maduro. The FAA told pilots on Friday to, quote, exercise caution when flying in Venezuela's airspace due to the, quote, worsening security situation and heightened military activity around the country. It warned that unspecified threats could pose a risk to planes at any altitude, including during takeoff and landing. In recent weeks, the U.S. has flown bombers near Venezuela. A U.S. aircraft carrier arrived in the Caribbean, and the U.S. has stepped up military exercises in Trinidad and Tobago. On Saturday, a U.S. Navy destroyer conducted an operation off the coast of Guyana. The U.S. also continued its bombing campaign against alleged drug-running boats in the Caribbean and the Eastern Pacific, which has involved the extrajudicial killing of at least 82 people. The White House has reportedly been considering dropping leaflets on Venezuela, reminding Venezuelans that the U.S. government has placed a $50 million bounty on Maduro's head, though it's unclear if it will follow through with the plan. Trump administration officials have been hoping the U.S. military buildup and psychological operations inside Venezuela would be enough for Maduro to step down voluntarily or for someone in his inner circle to turn on him, but there's no sign that either scenario will happen. That's the latest in Venezuela. So we can see, obviously, the trajectory here is ramping up. The tension is rising in this conflict. And it seems very much that we are moving towards the inevitability of a war, some sort of regime change war to overthrow Nicolas Maduro. The question then is why? Why are we doing this? And we know for a fact that it isn't for the reasons that they're telling us, because this has been exposed. It's not for alleged drug trafficking from Venezuela, because less than 1% of the drugs that are in the country or that are coming to the United States through these cartels are coming from Venezuela. That is a fact. None of the fentanyl is coming from Venezuela. That's been confirmed by Senator Rand Paul from his briefings. That's been confirmed from leaked whistleblowers within the Defense Department. We know that, and the reason that they're saying that that's the reason that they're doing these bombing of the boats, for example, is because that is in an attempt to get an emotionally manipulate the population, because a lot of people are, of course, affected by fentanyl in this country. So if they can frame it in the way that they're doing this to protect the country, to protect the United States and its people from the threat of fentanyl or the influx of drugs into the country, then that's in their mind, an easy way to get public support for this war. But the truth is, that's all it is. It's just a way to try and manipulate the people's emotions. The real reason they want this done is, well, there's a couple reasons. Of course, Marco Rubio, being from South Florida, being a relative of somebody who's fled communism in South America, he has a deep personal reason as to why he is looking to overthrow Maduro. It's ideological. It's because it's a communist regime. And he has described this before, this ideological, and a lot of the neocons feel this way. And it's very prevalent with a lot of these exiles that are living in South Florida right now. There is this feeling that we would like to overthrow these socialist regimes in South America. He's also doing so, and the administration is largely doing this for the real reason that because China and America are in essentially a type of war in South America for influence of these countries. And Maduro is right now a China-aligned country. China right now has influence over the Maduro regime, and it's really China, Russia. It's mostly China, but Russia also has a relationship with Maduro, and it's really a United States versus a United States versus China and Russia conflict in South America right now. Really, it's a U.S. versus China conflict for influence over all these regimes. These are all basically puppet regimes of whatever superpower can control them. And right now, the U.S. wants control over Venezuela, which is currently essentially in control by China. So that's the real reason for this overthrow. Now, the stated reason and the rebuttal to what I just said is that no, it's a legitimate strategic wish that the United States wants access to the gold and the oil, of which there's a lot in Venezuela. They want access to these minerals, and that would be a legitimate thing to say if only the Trump administration didn't just turn down a deal for all of that. It was exposed that Marco Rubio, by the way, was the one who turned this down. Maduro offered access, complete alignment with DC's interests for the gold and for the oil. He promised to cut ties with China and Russia and completely align his interest with the United States for his oil and for his gold. The United States turned it down because they're not looking for just an economic deal or a minerals deal or a trade deal. They're looking for complete overthrow of the government, and they want complete influence over the government. This is foreign adventurism 101. It's Empire 101. Because the empire is only looking to expand here. That's the entire point of this move. And again, as I said with the Iran move, you can tell that the point isn't what they're telling you because everything that they're telling you is a lie. It's really that simple. If it was really about drugs, if it was really about drugs, and if it was really about what they're telling you it's about, then why wouldn't we be overthrowing Mexico? Why wouldn't we be overthrowing Colombia? Because those two countries make up significantly more drugs that are coming in to the United States than anything coming out of Venezuela, whether it be fentanyl or cocaine or anything. So that's off the bat a lie. And this is the stuff that the American people are sick of. And polling indicates that this is true. This is CBS and YouGov poll. CBS YouGov did a poll just yesterday it actually came out. And it says that 70% of Americans oppose the U.S. taking military action against Venezuela. And of course, trying to overthrow the Maduro regime. 70% of Americans aren't for this, which naturally means that a lot of Republicans aren't for this. So this is the rift. This is the rift between the non-interventionist Republicans, the ones who actually believed what we've been campaigning on for 10 years, and the people like Lindsey Graham, Marco Rubio, who are looking to, after Trump leaves office, take back control of DC and take back control of the Republican Party. And if that happens, then what was any of this for? That's the real question. If that actually is what ends up happening, if the neoconservatives and the establishment Republicans take back control of the institutions in this country, not that they've ever lost control, but if they really take back prominence and try to portray themselves as being supported by the public, then what have we even accomplished in this 10 years? And you can almost even say that now with Lindsey Graham being so close to the president as he is. What was the point of it all then? That is what we're going to have to reconcile with in the midterms. We're going to have to decide which direction we go. And we're going to have to decide in 2028, is J.D. Vance the candidate to continue America First, or is he going to sell out? Like, at this point, he seems more likely that he'll sell out to the neoconservatives. So we'll have to decide when the time comes. That is where I will end it off for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe down below. Please be sure to go follow me on Instagram, X, and Spotify, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Have a good day.
Americanism, not globalism.
I am not a slave. I am a free citizen.
There should be no Federal Reserve System.
Only America first.